Alright, well, I wanted to finish this up. This is probably about hopefully the last little bit, and then I'll try and stitch it together with the editor and show you what was done. This would deal with that scroll saw behind me, and I'm having a little problems with lighting and probably even with sound on this, but well, I'll get it figured out sooner or later. Anyhow, the part I wanted you to see is this one right here. So I'm going to get a little closer so that you can see it. And I'll show you what happened. Now, I had used J&B weld on this, and we saw that part. And as I was cleaning it up, this little backing plate that I made out of the cut aluminum, it actually fell off. And that kind of surprised me a lot because I thought JB Weld was pretty much stuck to anything. But the whole process does not need to be redone. I'm simply going to get rid of this part and stick this other part here onto the scroll saw so that it can hold the table. And the interesting part about this is that this JB weld turned out to be pretty strong. I noticed that when I was trying to mill the new holes back into it. So I think it's going to work pretty good. If it doesn't, the next time I fix it, I will weld it either with something called a Luma weld, or I'll just use a regular Heliarc type of a weld on it. Okay, so now we're going to stop a minute and I'm going to reset the camera. Alright, so here is the part again, and it goes back here. So there's a couple of things I have to do is unscrew the screws, which are interesting because they actually take an Allen wrench, which is a bit of a surprise. But pretty much everything on this saw is set up the same way, and it may it didn't. I thought maybe it would have had a wrench on it that fit everything. So let's put this on and see how it does once we mount the table. If you happen to hear cars racing in the background, it doesn't happen often, but they're actually about 3/4 of a mile away. And when they get an opportunity, they race on one of the farm roads here, usually until the police show up, I guess. There. Okay. I'm not going to make them super tight until I put the table on, and then I'm going to use that little bit of an adjustment up and down to level the table. Okay, there's that. And now we need a table. Now normally you would want to level this up with a real level, but the marks on this were pretty accurate, and I think I'm pretty close. And what I want to do is get this in there, tighten it up, and then we'll be able to tell how well it works. We're good there. Now, a blade. There was a modification made to this by the previous owner that makes it kind of difficult to change blades. So the time you actually make up with the little snap-in doohickey there, you lose because you can't flip this cup up and stick the whole thing down. What you have instead is the need to go under, stick the blade up through the hole, and find your spring holder and pull it out. No, didn't do it that time. It's also a good idea to get your blade ready to match up here. So let's try it again. I believe I had that in. Alright. Now we have to do the upper part. usually don't have to struggle with it like that, but it's not wanting to play nice tonight for some reason. Okay, that should be relatively tight. Bring the arm down, pull the snap part out. Okay, and at that point, we have the blade attached, but it isn't very tight. And that's what this knob does. It lets you tighten up. Lets you tighten up your blade. And if you don't get it right, the end of your blade will slip off. So we're going to have to do this again. This is basically because you can't put the blade and the housing through that little hole. Now we'll see if we made that tight enough. As you tighten your blade, you can sort of strum it a little bit with your finger, and you'll hear the pitch go up. That tells you how much tighter it's getting. And a lot of blade tightness is something that you as the user have to figure out. Now I need to find something that has electric, because the one cord I have running things here I'm using for the camera light. So hold on. Okay, well, we're kind of like back again. I needed to reshoot the final part of this, and that's what this part is right now. So earlier I talked about the controls on this. Down there was a on and off and a speed control. That's something important to know where it is, first so you can turn it on, and secondly so you can turn it off real quick if there's a problem. And then we were talking about putting the blades in and the necessity for them to be tight. And it's this piece right here that does that part. It turns left and right, and what I'm doing is trying to tighten it up till I hear it kind of ping a little bit. I don't know if you can hear that or not. There we go. Right in there is really good. That means it's sharp enough, or I'm sorry, that it's tight enough that as it's cutting, and these things cut on the downstroke, they're being pulled down. This upper arm, this is a housing. The arm that moves is underneath this housing, and that goes up and down and follows the blade. If it isn't tight enough, the blade can kink and bend while it's making its trip up and down, and then you're going to be replacing blades and not really sawing anything. Scroll saws are really a handy tool, for, I would say, material here in the neighborhood of a ½ inch or less. And when I'm making the handles for my knives, I cut those out of hardwoods, maple, walnut, teak on occasion for the sailor's knives that I make, and rigger's knives, and all kinds of really wackadoodle, crazy hardwoods from around the world that when I go into the wood shop, if I spot odds and ends that were cut-offs and they look like they're big enough to be scales on each side of a knife blank, then I'll usually buy that, saw it up on the bandsaw, and then use this to cut it close to the actual profile of the knife handle. And then from there it's a matter of rasping and sanding until I get it to look exactly right, that it gets fine sanded and oiled, or whatever dressing is going to go on it. But you'll see that as time goes, and I'm sure that as we do this, some of you are going to get a chance to win some of these knives anyhow. It's one way to get your stuff out there, and I don't know how many I'm going to be around to make. So that's how we go. Now I'm going to turn this on. This is 1/4 inch plywood. It's sort of nasty, but let's just see how this gobbles it up. Oh yes, there is one other thing. This part here, let's flip her up for you first. This is where your blade attaches. You pull, on this model, you pull it out, and it's just a pin that slips into the blade holder and lets you move the blade or the blade holder. There is a tube coming down here and a plastic tube coming down here. These two tubes are what blow the sawdust out of the way of whatever your project is. And you want to get it close to your project, so that's why you have this ability here to raise this up and down by loosening that. Now the problem is you can't rest it on your project. If you do that, you are going to really bind things up and find yourself in a sort of a world of hurt. So what I do is I usually leave about 3/8 of an inch between that, the bottom of this, and the top of the saw table here. Alright, let's give this a try, and then we'll finish this video up and get it posted. You should never let go like I just did. Okay. That's that end of it. Okay, so this is just to show you it's how you go around curves and make circles and things like that. There are some very, very good scroll saw videos out there, and if you want to find one where it's like, oh gee, what if I had to make a living doing this stuff and I was living in a poor country, there's a really interesting video from India that shows the process of making Koran holders, you know, that a wooden piece that unfolds and then they can put the open Koran on that on a table. And watching those folks make those, especially the scroll saw guy, was amazing. Their scroll saws were so old that they actually have a wooden upper arm on it, and the blades are much longer. They are much more powerful with the motor that's in them, and they have a quick release on them. So while this guy's running that saw, he hits the end of his cut, he just pops off the power, flips up the tab on the top arm. He can take the blade top out and then stick it up through another hole in that as he's cutting his design into that holder. I would say that's really a video that's worth watching, so that you can appreciate having tools here that are a bit safer, and you don't have the production push on you. The main thing I see with a scroll saw when I'm using it is take your time. Take your time and have good light and follow your cut. And what you end up with then is a really good cut that doesn't take a whole lot of finish work in it. A lot of people, though, use these kind of saws to make wooden jigsaw puzzles as well. And that's a thinner blade, and you know, you kind of have to read up on what different blades are for different types of cuts that you want to make. Alright, so this should finally conclude this. I've been putting this thing together in parts and pieces for about 2 weeks now, but this should finally end that. I'll get it posted, and my next one, I hope, is going to be working in the leather shop and making the key fobs for my subscribers. I'll give a heads up on that. I think it's 86 subscribers as of today, but I don't know who they are, because a lot of the people that subscribed, they put their subscription on private. So it just tells me a number that somebody's there. And if I know who it is that subscribed, then I can find a way to contact you and let you know that you're one of the 100 that gets the leather key fob. I'll explain that in greater detail in the key fob video, because I don't want anybody that subscribed to miss out on getting one. Alright, thank you all. Good night. Be well, be happy, drink lots of rum or beer. I'm going to look for a beer. I don't think I've had one in a couple of weeks. I'm always too busy anymore. It sucks. Alright, so long now. Bye-bye.